Hi, this is Observe Breathe, also known as Natalia. This is my tale as to how I helped to heal my body into a permanent asymptomatic state from contracting the HSV, i.e. herpes virus. It's a long video. If you want to watch it, please do. If you're curious as to what I did, you can watch this and you can read my book, or you can just go find my book and it lays out everything that I did for you guys. But without further ado, here we are, the tale of my experience. How do I even begin with this one? Hi, my name is Natalia. I have herpes. It's been about 2 years since I contracted the HSV2 virus, potentially the HSV1. I never had an outbreak, so I don't really know. And I wanted to tell my tale because maybe there's other people in the world that might have felt like I felt and feel really alone and stigmatized, excluded, shamed. We think nowadays with such a popular virus, though Corona is like all the hype on it, but we think nowadays with such a popular virus that we would get over the societal shame that so many of us face when it comes to this disease. But it's just not how things are from my experience. So I wanted to share my story because it's the 2-year anniversary. Because for me, this is something I'm very proud of. What I went through, how I dealt with it, how I'm facing everything now. And maybe, just maybe, what I have to share might help some people out there, because I believe you don't need pharmaceuticals or antivirals to heal from this disease. Technically, we can't say cure because, anybody who says they've cured it gets attacked. So I'm just going to say that I've healed my symptoms and I have brought the disease into a state of permanent asymptomatic state. I still face irreparable nerve damage, meaning that I experience what's known as formication. No, not fornication, formication. Big difference there. Which means that I still experience, sometimes I feel like little bits of jabbing or tingling or things that are happening in my nerve endings that, I could stare at my hand and it could feel like it's getting stabbed, but, it's like not getting stabbed, right? So that's what formication means. But other than that, I have successfully stopped all outbreaks, and it's been almost 2 years. It'll be as of August that it'll be 2 years that I stopped these outbreaks. It was quite a bit of work and not for the faint of heart. So I wanted to make this video to kind of tell my tale as to what happened, and it's part of my healing journey. So prior to getting the disease, I got out of an abusive relationship. Some people would say that it's not abusive because I wasn't physically abused, even though I did experience the person holding me against my will at times, or, destroying my property around me, or violently coercing me into doing things I didn't want to do. But for me, it was extremely damaging. I have not had intercourse since this relationship. And before I was broken up with, the man who was the only man who's ever inseminated me, and that was very important to me because I wanted that person to be the person I was going to procreate with. But this man basically told me that no man would want to be with me, and that I was basically damaged goods. They might deny this. I'm just going to share my experience and how it's affected me. Shortly after this, my closest platonic male friend that I was really close with, I loved him very much. We had a really good friendship. It was good flow. It was good tantric energy. It was consistent, congruent. It was all the things that I really appreciate in a dynamic. I turned to him for support. And I guess he had his own agenda. So he started coming on to me, and I kept kind of pushing him away and telling him that I wasn't ready for a relationship, and that if I wanted to be with him, it would be to be in a relationship, because I was not going to be a fuck buddy. I was, not going to take this extremely precious and intimate friendship that I had and just, ruin it. So that was quite a journey. He, after I kissed him, asked me to be his partner. Then shortly after, he made love to someone else, which I found out about through the grapevine. I started getting visions, because him and I had fooled around a few times, that if we didn't stop fooling around, that basically I was going to get this virus from him, and that it would be detrimental to my health. And this was a very, very, very strong vision I had. I had dreams of it. I had an elder basically tell me not to do that. She had also been staying in the same space that I was and had a vision. So I went to talk to him and basically asked him not to fool around with me anymore. And he just went, "Oh, I'm tired." And he went to bed. And I laid beside him on the other side of the bed, because I didn't have a ride to drive myself home, and I didn't feel like imposing that on him, and that was my doing for not speaking up. And he crawled over and began to kind of, eat me out. And I froze. I didn't really want that. I had just verbalized that I didn't want that. And it was kind of like freaking out, because I just knew that I was going to get it. My intuition was screaming at me. So I reciprocated efforts, and I felt something enter my body. It was a really weird feeling. And about 14 days later, I was doing a photo shoot, and I decided to eat some weed chocolate and lay in bed, in this big fluffy bed that I got for the night, because, it was part of the shoot deal. And I started meditating in butterfly, and all of a sudden I had this vision of what looked like ayahuasca fractal patterns, but very viral, kind of taking over my inner vision, if that makes any sense. And I felt this thing travel down to the base of my spine. And all of a sudden, I felt extreme jolting pain shooting down my leg, shooting through my clitoris and out. And I knew I got it. I told some friends about it. I went and downed a bunch of lysine. I downed a bunch of oil oregano. I'd been studying quite a bit on it. I went to the healthcare office. They didn't think I had it. They're like, "No, that's like super rare to get that from any form of fooling around." Surely enough, about, maybe about a week or 10 days later, I got my first outbreak, and I got the call from the healthcare office saying, "Yeah, you have it." And I decided I was going to go on this really, really crazy warrior journey. And that I wasn't going to do the typical path of taking those antivirals, the Valtrex, the this, the that. And I was going to try to purge and eradicate the virus from my body. Which means I had to bring myself to the closest state of ketosis. Meaning get as skinny as I could get. While not dying and not starving myself. So I went on this crazy cleanse. I studied a bunch of YouTubers like Nature Heals All and people like that, and I saw what they were doing to cure the body of herpes through raw veganism. Now, ironically, I actually got hired to play a raw vegan festival, and it's pretty funny because, I didn't know I'd be able to perform with everything that I was going through. It felt like I was dying. It didn't feel like, oh, this is just like a minor inconvenience. This literally felt like this giant dagger was impaling my cervix. And I was experiencing this viral entity taking over my nervous system and shooting firing pain. Like on a scale to 1 to 10, it was about a 9.9 or 9.8. It was horrifically painful. And the people that I had talked to that had the virus, they're like, the first one's the worst, and after about a year, you get less of them, and it gets less painful, and la la la. And from what I was describing, they were like, no, that doesn't really sound like you have just that virus. Do you know what I mean? Like, so basically, contracting the virus was pretty full on, and I did this thing where I took all my money. I think I spent, I don't even know, probably at least $8,000 on this adventure. I bought an ozonator, I bought a distiller. I started drinking only ozonated distilled water. I refused to drink any tap water. I refused to drink any other water other than distilled ozonated water. So I bought a distiller, I bought an ozonator, and I started doing a whole bunch of absolutely intense protocols. I wrote a book in the meantime of all this because I was going through this like absolute excruciating pain. So this is my book. I'll put it up here, but I'll put it aside. It's called Herpes. And it kind of goes into the entire story so you can understand it. So the table of contents is like the backstory, contracting the virus, about the virus, viral symptoms, detox symptoms, stage 1 protocol, stage 2 protocol, stage 3 protocol, stage 4 protocol. And then section 2 has foods, herbs, salves, and section 3 has the food blog, recipes, and links. So I compiled all this data and information because I was literally obsessed with studying this virus and doing absolutely anything I could to live a life free of the pain. And if that meant that I'd have to eat in a really weird diet for many, many years, then I'd do it. Because what came for me was the amount of emotional pain I was in from the PTSD of my last relationship and what I had been experiencing in, small town gossip, as well as just like the realization that one of my closest male friends gave me this disease, and then, he did his best to try to be polite or integral about it, but, it was very wishy-washy. His very deep attraction for me, then suddenly, as soon as he gave me the virus, it was like he wasn't interested in me anymore. And that level of like rejection after being given a disease, after getting out of an abusive relationship was, that was intense on my psyche, like I got really suicidal. But ironically enough, it was kind of what I needed to evolve as is life. And I realized that it was what I had asked for many years ago. So many years ago, I was in Zen training, and my Zen master asked us to meditate and to envision our greatest nightmare as though it was our greatest dream. And I thought to myself, like this was back in like 2012. Yeah. So quite a while ago. And I remember thinking to myself that my ideal nightmare would be me finally settling down in a small town where I know many people, finding what I thought was the love of my life, him basically ending up being extremely narcissistic and dominating and basically completely fucking my mind, and me losing a big chunk of my memory, and then having my best male friend basically give me a disease, and then having my closest female friend stigmatize and exclude me, and then being somewhat excluded by the town. So that was basically my greatest nightmare, and I lived it. And what was interesting is that after I lived that nightmare and I transcended my awareness through it, came some of my biggest dreams, which I'm now continuing to live. So for me, I'm grateful for what I went through, but yeah, let's continue the story. So if you guys don't know much about herpes, there's a lot of stigma around it. It's like people treat it like it's leprosy, but a lot of the population has one or another form of herpes. There's 8 different forms of herpes. I mean, you guys have heard about chicken pox, or you've heard about, cold sores, and things like that. We normalize these things and we don't shame people as much. But when you're dealing with someone who's dealt with genital herpes, you know, there's so much stigma around it. Like, people pretend like there isn't, but there really, really is. And there's so many people that are incredibly uneducated about it. And I was one of those people. Like, I really feared getting it. I was terrified. And I really loved my friend, and he was kind of my exception to my rule for that slight moment in time. And yeah, you know, it was a lesson to be learned, and you know, that trust is a valuable thing to invest wisely, right? And that it always comes from within. So herpes itself can spread from the cold sores, HSV1, to HSV2. It's the very same disease. It's like literally just one of them kind of comes up and it imprints itself here. It settles right around here. And the other one is at the base of the spine where it settles. And it's contagious even when it's asymptomatic, though it's rare. So you don't have to have an outbreak to spread it. A lot of people have asymptomatic HSV2 or 1, and they don't even know because they show no symptoms and they spread it. And then people who are more sensitive or have like more delicate, you know, systems, they will end up getting the disease from these people and not knowing where it came from. So it's really interesting disease that way. And it's like chickenpox, where even if you become permanently asymptomatic, like I have, where you don't have outbreaks and you hardly have any symptoms whatsoever anymore, it's forever going to show in your genetics. There's very few cases of people who've gotten, you know, like a 0.00 something in their genetic test. And a lot of people say that this is controversial or it's conspiracy or it's this or that. I personally have met some females that have successfully eradicated the, you know, virus from their body to the point that it's almost non-existent. You know what I mean? So for me, I believe that what I did led to my success. So yes, I wasn't going to take the antivirals and suppress it. I wasn't just going to eat the food that was going to bury it right away. I was going to be a full-blown warrior. And I was going to stay present to the pain, the emotions, and the horror. And I was going to love myself through it all. So yeah, I remember, I mean, I'm still working through my feelings of feeling horrified or feeling very disturbed by my experience. But it's been very awakening for me, and it's really brought me really close to myself, because I remember having nights upon nights on end where I would try to touch myself and I would remove my hands and they'd be covered in blood. And I remember my hair starting to fall out and just me holding myself and saying, I got you, I got you, I got you. And I realized that everything I wanted from a relationship, because I've never been a super like relationship seeker. I've always been a very individual person, but everything I wanted from my relationship with these men, that I was going to provide for myself, that I was going to be disciplined and consistent and considerate and loving. And I did that. So my symptoms. My symptoms were really intense. I mean, it might have been because I was like super underweight. I lost a lot of weight after my relationship with my last partner. My adrenals were drained. I remember getting tested at the healthcare office. And yeah, my adrenals were fairly drained. I was very skinny. I was trying to eat a super plant-based diet. And in the beginning, my symptoms included several muscle spasms. Like, I found it really hard to walk. I felt like I was like walking through like water. It was like, it was like really intense. And I had this extreme pain in my spine. I can't even describe it. It's like, it was really intense. And yeah, I had convulsions, fevers, chills, aches, pain, swollen lymphs, lesions in the urethra, anus, cervix, and labia. So basically how herpes reacts is that for HSV2, for instance, it hangs out in the base of the spine, and then when the immune system drops low enough, the body reacts and the nervous system gets shot. And then because the nerves are underneath the skin, basically the skin splits. So that's what's known as the lesions. And then you have this like contagious fluid that spreads and creates more cuts. So it's pretty horrific. And experiencing it in my urethra was excruciating. My anus, my cervix, all of that. It was pretty full on. I had this non-stop feeling of bugs climbing under my skin, or like these tiny little razor blades that sent these electric shots through my spine or through the nerve endings of my clitoris or under the skin. It dramatically altered my health. Like, I felt like I had this ongoing cold that never went away. It was like my immune system was always low, and I always felt like I could just get super sick at any time. And I always joked with my friends because I performed at a lot of shows even though I was battling this virus. I kept performing, and I remember joking with my friends that I would turn into a pumpkin at midnight because I literally, my immune system would drop and I had to just lay down. That was that, you know. So for me, it was like my nightlife was over, that's for sure. So the first outbreak, I kept it going. Basically, it went on for a couple of months. So instead of just like trying to suppress it and get rid of it, what I did was just kept pushing it out of my body by cleansing my body, by triggering the virus, provoking it. I studied it pretty extensively as to like how the virus reacts to certain foods or to certain things, and my plan was to basically purge it out because I mean, the virus is pretty old. I mean, it's pretty new, but it's pretty old. It's pretty relative. I know it's very vague, but people used to have to deal with this before antivirals. So I studied a lot of research as to how people did that. So basically, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff here. So, so I kept observing the thoughts of PTSD. I had to go through all the emotions in order to overcome this, and that this would be a great catalyst and trigger to purge all the pain from my entire life. I kept meditating, I kept observing, I kept working on my e-course, I kept working on my e-books, I kept working on my articles and the illustrations for my musical, I kept working on my documentaries. I was determined to regain my health for performing, and I kept performing. I let the virus serve me as a journey of awakening. It forced me to observe all my attachments to food and to identity, and to realize desire as the source of suffering. That was literally some of the craziest ninja training I have ever freaking gone through, that's for sure. Insecurity, worthlessness, and isolation. So this was before COVID. I mean, for me, like, my journey with this virus was like being in a pandemic. It was like, oh my god, I spent most of my time alone, and even when I was around people, I felt alone because my body was just in so much pain. So it basically brought up everything, and I learned to listen to this really quiet little voice that I'd been so deeply buried underneath all the trauma. And I began to trust myself. And I learned to hold myself in the ways that I sought to be seen, heard, and held. And I loved myself through it all. It was a journey of true forgiveness. I love myself through the loss of close friends. I love myself through the public shaming and exclusion. I love myself through the loss of my physical appearance and beauty. Because at that point, I lost so much weight. I was basically like a walking skeleton. My eyes were extremely sunk in. I didn't look human, you know. I loved myself through the self-hatred, the self-abandonment, and through my depleted self-esteem. I learned to truly love myself in a way I could never imagine. And this was my commitment. So I came up with a strict long-term protocol. I came up with 4 stages of protocol. Stage 1, activation. So weaning into a fully raw and selective diet, implementing oxygen and ozone therapy, keeping outbreak active, stopping replication, and targeting the virus directly. So yeah, so what I learned about the virus, it needs to keep active to be able to eradicate a big part of it. There's such thing known as a viral load, so antivirals suppress the viral load. The lower your viral load is, the less that you're able to spread it to someone else. So the virus replicates itself, and in order to eradicate a big part of the viral load, you have to do the opposite of suppression, which is basically bring it out. Then you have to stop its replication. And then, once you have done as much eradication as you can, you have to bring the body back to a state of homeostasis and then use suppressive therapy. So the first stage was that activation. It was to keep the outbreak active, to stop the replication, and target the virus directly. It was about strengthening the organs in preparation for stage 2, because to do a major cleanse like this required building the strength of the organs, specifically the gallbladder, the spleen, the liver. So the second stage was elimination, which was a fully raw restrictive diet, drinking only distilled ozonated water with implementing daily herbs, weaning off of oxygen therapy, and building to a water fast with neem seed oil. That was a journey. Stage 3 was integration, healing the organs from the fast with selective herbs, implementing synergy pharmaceuticals herbal protocol, continuing fully raw diet, and slowly weaning to a raw till 4 diet with selective foods. Stage 4 was recuperation, eating only fruit till 4 p.m. and then eating red meat or salmon with raw and cooked vegetables, continuing to drink ozonated and distilled water and healing herbs. So stage 1 was weaning into a fully raw diet. Stage 2 was a fully raw diet. Stage 3 was integration, which means that, basically letting the body come back into homeostasis, starting to implement certain cooked foods. And then stage 4 was starting to implement more acidic, high lysine leveled foods such as meat and salmon. So, stage 1 protocol. So, where did I learn this protocol? I saw it as a vision before I contracted the STI, so I implemented it after 400 hours of comparative research through scientific journals, YouTube, websites, forums, and nutritional databases. I consulted with many alternative health professionals. I trusted in the power of my intuition, knowledge, and application. My hypothesis was, since herpes is a very intelligent virus that quickly adapts to the host's habits, I would have to continuously change my approach. For 2-3 months, I had a specific protocol, which later changed. So, my diary log, how I start the day. This was a day in the life of my life when I began this protocol. 1, I oil pull with ozonated coconut oil. I tongue scrape and brush my teeth and then hold colloidal silver under my tongue for at least 10 minutes. I prep my ozonator. I ozonate the water for 40 minutes. I take stabilized oxygen hydrogen peroxide therapy, colloidal plus aloe plus hydrogen peroxide 35% food grade, and wait to drink my water or food for at least 50 minutes. I take a bath in salt water with 3% food grade peroxide. I get out, I pat off excess water, I spray a combination of magnesium salt, colloidal silver, ACV onto my vagina, I blow dry it in. I literally blow dry my vagina, it was full on. Okay. I apply DMSO and manuka honey and essential oils such as peppermint, tea tree, lavender, geranium, clove, sandalwood. And I would do intervals with myrrh. I thoroughly rub my lumbar vertebrae with DMSO and 3 drops of oil of oregano. So I actually have this, I don't really use it anymore unless I'm experiencing some severe nerve pain and freaking out thinking I'll have an outbreak, which has yet to happen in many years, but So basically this is really high quality coconut oil mixed with DMSO, and it's ozonated. And it's got some oil of oregano on there. And I would apply that on the base of my spine twice. In the morning and in the night. And I'd have to be really careful not to sit on anything or not to touch any fabric, because the DMSO, basically anything you put on it, it will travel into your skin. So it can be quite dangerous. A lot of the things that I did were actually quite dangerous. And I'm pretty sure that there were a few moments in this journey that I'm describing to you guys where I actually thought I was going to die. So, basically, I take time to rest and I integrate through pranayama and gentle meditation. I would do certain forms of yoga like spinal lifts while integrating that potion. I would make a smoothie or eat fruits whole, avoiding all high arginine foods. And I would add specific superfoods to this. I'd make a base of the smoothie made of lemon balm, pau d'arco, licorice, sarsaparilla, heel allflower, dandelion, burdock, nettle, St. John's wort, wild yam, yellow dock, milk thistle, about 50 herbs. And I would drink neem leaf tea. I would basically take every herb that I studied inhibits the replication of the virus. I would alternate between these herbs, as consistently taking the same herbs could create hormone imbalances. So the key was to have a library of herbs, which I had, and I spent a lot of money on. And I would rotate and change the combinations of herbs so that the virus would continuously have to adapt to what I was doing, and so not to create hormone imbalances in my body. Because like I said, this was a very dangerous endeavor. I would take my probiotic and I'd get my tasks done, and then I would make lunch, which was raw, and the only sauce I would use is coconut oil with olive oil and black cumin seed, oil of oregano, and nutritional yeast. If you guys want any of my recipes, it's in my book. But I made things that would taste really horrible taste good somehow, and I formulated them, and they worked. I drink colloidal silver through the day on an empty stomach. I hold it under tongue for 20 minutes. I also drink water with grapefruit seed extract and chlorophyll. And I would take my second dose of oil of oregano under the tongue for about 10-15 minutes. I would clean the dishes, do work, and rest. And then I'd go to the beach and I would do a turmeric suppository. For those of you who don't know what suppositories are, they're something that you stick up your vagina. So I would ozonate coconut oil and turmeric, and I would stick it up there. I would flip myself upside down on a rock, and then I'd swim into the ocean, dry off, and apply myself. I would eat supplements with supper if I didn't at lunch. Those would include L-lysine, selenium, zinc, B12. So there's so many supplements out there that if you combine these supplements, they basically will help you to stop the replication of the virus, such as LSD-1 inhibitors. LSD-1 inhibitors, such as those in curcumin, actually prevent the virus, the HSV virus, from replicating. So that was important, was to take these supplements. Then I would take the last treatment of oil of oregano on the tongue, the last treatment of colloidal silver. I would drink tea. I would study the internet for alternative healing things. I would take my final bath with salts, dry off, apply the spray, blow dry, apply salves, spine massage, and oil of oregano at the base of the spine. I did this every single frickin' day for 3 months. Like, the amount of time I had to actually work on things was just like so minute. I remember just trying to navigate my life. I had my best friend at the time, and she was just asking me why I hadn't told people I had herpes, and I'd made the status about how I had HSV too, and if people wanted to inquire with me. And I was dealing with a lot of people that were trying to give me their perception of my body and what I should do or how I should behave to be integral or all these things, and it was a lot to handle because I was trying to basically keep up this crazy regimen that I had, on top of all the drama and all the BS that I had to face. So, stage 2 protocol, elimination. So I'm going fully raw, ozone and hydrogen peroxide therapy, strengthening organs through specific herbs, and neem seed oil fast. I learned that the only way to effectively clear the virus from the system was to oxygenate and alkalinize the body through a restrictive raw food diet for an extended period of time. This was not going to be easy, as I spent half a year recovering from PTSD and had already dealt with severe weight loss. Prior to contracting the virus, I had a vision of going raw vegan. I didn't know what it meant, but the moment I was diagnosed, I knew what to do. I weaned myself into eating raw. 1 month was spent transitioning into a fully raw diet by implementing alkaline and non-arginine forming foods. The most important part of healing from this virus is food. Food and stress. Those are like the biggest factors. Any food that creates too much arginine in the body causes the virus to replicate. So the trick is to have a high lysine diet. So that's basically what I did, and my aim was to eliminate anything that also created citrulline, because citrulline provokes arginine in the body. So for a long time, I stayed away from anything that forms citrulline, like bananas. Bananas are my staple now, but my body can handle it. So I studied nutritional databases, which often contradicted one another. If you ever do your research with nutritional databases, most of them are put in by certain people around the world. They're not by like health professionals. They're just people putting in, okay, these are the amino acid balance, this is that. So a lot of them would contradict one another, and I'd have to find the middle ground between the comparative research that I found. So I learned to experiment with the food and what would provoke a response in my nervous system and what wouldn't. So I began to wean into the raw diet, and how I did this was to eat only alkaline and non-arginine forming foods. I was mostly raw for 2 weeks, where I ate teff, mushrooms, and cooked squash. And then I learned, okay, squash isn't good. I thought squash was the best because I was studying Dr. Sebi, and Dr. Sebi's like, yeah, squash is. And then, you know, other places on the internet were like, no squash. So I eliminated squash. I haven't eaten squash in a really long time since then. Actually, I haven't eaten squash since. So I was really strict in the beginning, and I stayed away from tomatoes, corns, peas, blueberries, sprouts, bananas. And then I became more flexible when I didn't have an outbreak. I cut out all seeds, nuts, and proteins, except for spirulina and broccoli, which have plant-based proteins. I bought a dehydrator, a spiralizer, a mandolin, a Vitamix, and I became a full raw vegan, eating selected foods, mostly bell peppers, cauliflower, olives, greens, bananas in moderation, berries in moderation, coconut oil, nutritional yeast, zucchini, apples, pears, and figs. That was my diet. It was intense. A biggest mistake I made on the raw food journey was not eating enough fruit. I later learned that fruit has an exponentially higher calorie intake than vegetables, where I began to focus more so on being frugivore than eating tasty, savory things I was making with my dehydrator. I eliminated sugar with the exception of fruit and stevia. I didn't eat honey, I didn't eat maple syrup, I didn't eat lucuma, I didn't eat any of that. I just ate fruit. Even though lucuma is a fruit, and you know what I mean. But I ate full fruit. I ate more greens than imaginable, and I started crafting these intrinsic dehydrated delicacies such as wraps, pizzas, tacos, and burgers. I got creative, to say the least. My mental approach, this was an opportunity for me to up my game, to strengthen my immunity in all ways, mental and physical. I had to apply everything that I learned and reclaim my true nature. I had to master the non-identification that I had learned through the abusive relationship and put it to the test. So I do have videos on non-identification. Non-identification includes identification, meaning that we cannot be without the lens of perception. And once we learn to include the lens of perception, we are able to move beyond that perception. So this is why I make these videos, because in the past I would not be comfortable sharing my story because it would be seen as a story. And now I don't really care that it's a story. It's a story. It's stored things, and I let them go. They become unstored. And other people might relate to them, and it might, impact them in a way that helps them feel more positive about their life. So the thing that I applied this non-identification practice to was being raw vegan, because I loved cooked food. I loved the smell. Every time somebody would cook food around me, at first I would notice my desire and it would create suffering. So then I realized, okay, well, what if I enjoy the smell as though I am eating the food? And I started doing that, and I started having these super orgasmic experiences, just breathing in the steam from cooked food. It was something else. I ate a lot of salads with friends. Friends are like, what can I feed you? I'm like, salad? If it has this, this, and this, and not this, this, then? So yeah, it was about not identifying with the victim story and fully honoring the PTSD and the feeling of devastation from my experience. And it was about letting go of my love and identity that I had formed around plant-based foods, and then just understanding that I was going to go on this journey of facing all of my fears of being skeletal. I've always had a fear of being seen as super skinny or seeing myself as super skinny, and most of my life I've been super skinny. So this was just going to bring it to the next level. The detox symptoms. If any of you guys have ever gone on an extensive cleanse, then you know and you've heard of detox, and the detox is very real. The first wave of detox, I had diarrhea and headaches, extreme fevers, chills, fatigue, and a very, very deep depression, like suicidal thoughts. I reminded myself that the symptoms were a part of the process, and I kept focused on observing and breathing. And then I started to feel great. So for that first month, horrible. Month after that, I felt amazing. I felt euphoric. I had more energy than I had had in years, and I started to gain some of my weight back. I went from 117 to 88 pounds, and then back up to 108, and then to about 100. And then the second outbreak happened. I had just healed from the first, which took about a month. And then I did the neem seed oil treatment, which I will talk about after. The final frontier. Okay, so I cleansed my body through green juices and specific herbs such as yellow dock and milk thistle for many weeks. I then water fasted for 2 days and ingested 12 tablespoons of neem seed oil from India. And I made sure it was the most potent, most organic oil from India. Why did I do this? I found a forum online from like the 2000s and the 90s, and people had said that they were able to heal their body from herpes by eating neem seed. And even though it can be extremely toxic, nobody's actually fully died from it. So I was willing to take the risk. It was probably one of the most intense experiences I have ever had. The first day I took 6 tablespoons, 4 hours between each dose. I felt fine, as though I was on a drowsy and lucid trip. I remember being down on the beach and feeling like I was entering like a warm wind, and everything was very like, oh. And then I got extremely nauseous and dizzy. I got back up home, I laid down, and I began to lucidly dream. Felt like I was almost entering this strange psychedelic state. And then I began to purge everything that my body had held onto, all the emotions, everything. And then I began to literally purge, and I projectile vomited for like, I don't know, at least an hour. And my body discharged at the same time. I know that's like really graphic, and I'm sorry, but like that's what happened. I couldn't stop puking, I couldn't stop discharging, and I was like, oh my God, am I gonna die? So then I decided I was going to force myself to basically go to bed because I was getting freaked out, and I felt fever and chills and fever and chills and fever and chills. And then I only had a bit of... Okay, so that was the neem seed fast, as I shared with you guys before. Basically what happened with the neem seed fast was that I got really nauseous, I puked, projectile vomited, discharged, had fevers, chills, crazy viral activity. The next day I felt great. And then a few days later the outbreak came back, and it was way worse. And I had pushed my body so hard. I'd performed 2 shows, I'd done a market, and then I had this really confrontational talk with the guy who gave me the virus. And then I ran into my ex, and I basically got super sick that night. I felt like I was on this horrible anxiety drug that I couldn't get off of, and I remember everything feeling like it was spinning around me, and I didn't know if I was ever going to function in reality again. I remember being in the shower and grabbing the razor blades and thinking about ending my life, and what got me to hold on was that I was going to go play this raw food festival. And this little voice inside me was like, Talia, just hold on a little bit longer. And I'm glad I did. At the festival, I met this woman named Elle, also known as Rochelle. And she was living proof that what I was doing was going to work. Because she had contracted the virus in the same way that I did. And she healed her body from the virus in a very similar way that I did. So for me, meeting her was like that extra push that I needed for me to just keep going. So at this point, I'd been 3.5 months fully raw, vegan, no nuts, no seeds, nothing. Just basic and very low fat intake, mostly frugivore. And yeah, it was pretty full on. I started having really bad digestive issues, like extreme gas pains, extreme bloating, and nausea. Like I remember trying to eat food and just feeling like I wanted to puke, and it was so hard because it was like, oh, I was just getting so skinny. I was 68 pounds. I was a living skeleton, scaring everyone around me, and this was like the most intense point of that journey. But I started taking these medications known as Synergy Pharmaceuticals, and there's a lot of controversy around this company. They no longer exist because of COVID. Actually, their supplier, got kind of... Their supplier no longer supplies them because of COVID and shortages, I guess. So, but this was like the best medication I ever found for herpes. It's completely natural, and it's made with herbs such as tribulus, astragalus, an amino acid balance, rhodiola, and they basically amplified the herbs using science to make the herbal properties just a lot more prominent. Their hypothesis was if you create a super drug, like a pharmaceutical, off of a natural herb that already boosts your immune system, then the virus doesn't know how to adapt to it. Long story short, best medication of my life. I started feeling like a human being again. The outbreak stopped. I have not had a single outbreak since I began that medication and since I stopped that medication. It was completely natural herbal medication. The only thing scientific about it or made it a pharmaceutical was that it's like you know how an essential oil has like a million roses in it and then it's condensed to this tiny little liquid? It was like that, but like in a pill format for these herbs. So I started taking that. I went to Fruit Fest, got super inspired, and then I came back and I started having really, really, really bad digestive problems, like saying nausea, inability to digest food, horrible bloating, horrible gas, all of that. I remember calling Elle and being like, yo, what's with this? And she told me she'd gone through something similar, that happens around that time, and to just keep going. Just keep going. So I kept going, and then I started realizing that I was dying. So I decided it was time to initiate the next phase of my experiment because I had accidentally poisoned myself with rust. The lid of my water bottle had been rusting, and I was unaware of it because I kept my water bottle in a bag. So that really triggered the virus for me, and I just got to this point where I was like, fuck it. I'm eating cooked food again. So I began eating cooked potatoes as of September 9th, 2019. 9. Cue footage here. My homie was visiting to film my Queen of the Green documentary and, you know, got to get it on tape. So it'd been over 4 months since being fully raw, and the potatoes instantly created more viral activity in my body, but they also helped me to gain my weight back. So I stopped crafting these elaborate raw food meals, and I started to focus mainly on gaining calories through fruit, and then I'd eat a salad and a raw soup, and then my supper would be steamed vegetables on a bunch of potatoes. So my aim was to get as many calories as possible and to keep my viral load low. Then I began to eat lentils on November 1st, and lentils provoked the virus, but eventually my body adjusted, and oh my god, lentils. I remember eating lentils for the first time in like forever, and I was just like, whoo, I can think again. It was something else. Then I ate salmon, and the salmon, oh my god, I remember feeling high off salmon, like not having any meat of any sort for so long, and then eating salmon, and it was like, I felt happy. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely felt my mood shift and I felt happy. So the power of salmon, I tell you, the power of salmon. And also the salmon acted as a suppressant. So at first my body would respond and have all these strange sensations, like the feeling of stabbing and cutting and nerve pain. And then I would wake up in the morning and it would be like there'd be way less pain. So first it would aggravate and then it would soothe. So after eating 1 week of salmon, my hair grew thick, my wrinkles diminished because I started looking really old. Like I started looking like I was way older than I was. I think at the time I was 29 and I looked like I was like 55. And that scared me, but you know, part of the Skeletor journey of ketosis. So the salmon helped me have my skin go back to normal, the wrinkles diminished, and my skin regained a healthy complexion because I was gauntly pale. And I became emotionally and mentally stable, and I gained weight. Recuperation. So January 1st, 2020, I successfully performed and then danced till past midnight without severe symptoms. Because I'd always turn into a pumpkin at midnight. So it was like a really big feat for me to dance past midnight and not have severe symptoms. But then, on January 1st, 2020, I basically broke my toe and fractured parts of my foot. I was emotionally processing about the guy who gave me the virus, and I walked on this bridge and the bridge broke. So I called the guy and I was like, yo, can you help me? And he did, and that was really sweet of him. So then I went to Hawaii, and the doctor's like, what, you're gonna go to Hawaii? And I'm like, yeah, ain't no virus gonna stop me, ain't no broken toe gonna stop me. I am going to Hawaii. I remember I was suicidal. I was crying to the earth, and the earth told me, Pele, Kalani, Hawaii. I was like, okay, something about Kalani, something about Pele, something about Hawaii. Ironically enough, I remember I was on a wheelchair, then I was walking in crutches. I stayed at my friend's in Kauai for a bit, and he helped me fix my foot. And then I got to Puna in Big Island, Hawaii, and the place I was going to stay could no longer host me. So I'm like, dude, I'm like in crutches. Where am I going to stay? And I got asked to play this festival called Manifest, which was like a female honoring festival. And I was on the stage, and I just made a shout out to people. I'm like, yo, I'm in the flow with a broken toe. Don't know where I'm going to stay. And a whole bunch of people came to me after, and they're like, you can stay with me. And eventually, I was able to live at Kalani, and these beautiful women, oh my God, I'm so grateful for them. The beautiful boss babes, they took me in, and I became their filmmaker. And I started shooting all these great commercials for them, and then COVID happened, the pandemic, and everything had to be shut down, and I was on my broken toe, biking everywhere, foraging fruit, surviving. And I was able to heal quite a bit because I had so much access to fruit. And meat. I started eating beef, I remember, in Hawaii because I was very faint at a festival, and these local butchers came up to me and they served me some beef, and I ate it, and all of a sudden the spinning and the dizziness I was experiencing diminished. So I was like, cool. So I started doing this thing where I eat nothing but fruit in the day, and then in the evening I eat meat. And I still do that to this day. That's my diet. La la la. Okay, so then I left Kalani, and I came home to Canada, and during the second wave of the pandemic, I believe. And that was a journey. I invested a bunch of money in film gear, and I decided I was going to open a film company, and I got hired to do some projects, and I remember coming back from a pretty interesting project in the wild. And I got a call from the doctor, and the doctor was like, hey, your pap test has come back 8 times abnormal. It is now time for you to get a coloscopy. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. A form of biopsy that's up the vagina. Basically, they're going to go up my vagina, snip off a bit, and test it for cancer. So that was pretty intense for me because I knew that there was something more than just this virus that I was dealing with, because the pain that I faced ongoing was so excruciating. Like I said, the only way I could describe it was like a giant dagger sword, medieval sword, stabbing and impaling me from the inside. So there was a lot of emotional things that were happening between me and this guy, the one who gave me the virus, because he was one of my closest friends, and I love him very much. And we had this really strange situationship, which was romantic, but then platonic, and romantic and platonic, and romantic and platonic. And I hadn't fooled around with him since I got the virus, obviously, because, you know, I didn't want to, like, contract it again. Even though supposedly you can't contract it once you contract it or whatever. I didn't want the outbreaks to ever come back. So there's a lot of tension between us because I wanted things to be harmonious and clear, and he wanted to just keep doing things on his own accord regardless of how that was impacting me emotionally or psychologically, such as, you know, in the past, picking up my friends in front of me when I'm like, you know, supposed to be somewhat of a date, though we've never really gone on a date, you know what I mean? Just not honoring my verbal boundaries and flipping it all so that it seems like it's my problem when really it's just him being a dick. So there was a lot of confrontation. I got really tired of trying to hold him accountable and just have like a normal dynamic where we can just be harmonious and like just bounce off each other. So at this point, I ran into him and he told me that people had been calling him abusive, and I reflected some wisdom back to him, and I told him that I, was going to get tested for cancer, and he just didn't seem to care. So I tried to hang out with him, and then he ghosted me, and that was pretty intense because I felt really abandoned and alone going into the hospital and having parts of me snipped out of me. So then I chased after him some more because, I obviously didn't learn my lesson. So I chased after him and I said, hey, like, you mean a lot to me and I really would appreciate your support. And he did rise up to the occasion to try and heal our bond. Once again, kind of ghosted me after the surgery. So there was a lot of PTSD and emotional stuff for me to work through there. Being in a pandemic and being in isolation and having gone through already a year of isolation before that with everything I just shared with you guys. And then healing from all the PTSD and everything and feeling really worthless. Every guy that I kept trying to connect with emotionally or sexually was kind of put off by the idea of getting the disease from me. So I didn't experience too much intimacy. I haven't had too much intimacy since contracting the disease, to be honest. So yeah, there was a lot going on in the background of everything there. So yeah, going in for surgery, I found out that I had a precancerous lesion. The disease must have triggered another virus in my body. I'm guessing HPV, which must have come from some time before when I was raped. Who knows? I didn't know I had it. And then that created an outbreak inside of my cervix, which turned precancerous. And that was intense. I literally thought I was going to die. I had friends, very close friends of mine, tell me that they had dreams of me dying in surgery and, or the surgical procedure to be exact. And so I did everything that I could to make sure that I would be okay if that were to happen. And I got a lot of work done. Let's say that. Yeah, that's the bright side. I got a lot of work done. So then basically what happened was I went into, get this surgical procedure called a LEAP, which is a pretty standard procedure, but it was pretty intense. They put me on some medication to calm my heart down because I've had quite a bit of heart problems since my cervix has had some problems. Then supposedly the cervix and the heart are very intrinsically linked. So yeah, that was pretty intense. That's the only way to describe it. I was on my menstrual time, which they advise not to get this procedure on your menstrual time because it's like, 50 times more painful. And yeah, I was bleeding for quite some time, like months, because I had my menstrual time. Then I got the surgery and I had to recuperate from that surgery. And I was just like blood. And then I got my menstrual time. So it was like by the time I was done bleeding, I think it was like a month and a half or 2 months, and I was able to bathe again. I was able to do my things again, and I was able to finally penetrate myself without blood. And that was huge because it took so long it took me so long to not cry just by touching myself. It took so long. And so just to not have blood anymore was just like so fucking amazing. And yeah, I got really focused on continuing to write my song. I have a song that I started right after the abusive relationship before I got the virus called Damaged Goods, which I'm going to release this month. I've been working on the song for a couple years now. And so I was able to write the final chapter in that song. And yeah, it's all pretty fresh. I got the surgery in late January, so it's May now. And it's been 2 years since I began this warrior journey of stopping the outbreaks, stopping the symptoms by just taking this path that I've been on. And it's been about me working through all the ways that I have enabled abuse by trying to address it kindly and assertively, trying to see the best in people and to understand rather than to condemn, and to be compassionate and loving, especially when someone meets me with ghosting and avoidance. Because I come off as needy when really I've been a warrior and I've met my needs and I've survived my own personal hell and I've made heaven within it. So yeah, I just wanted to share that story with you guys. Nowadays, I don't take any medication. I don't even take lysine supplements. I mean, maybe if I feel something is imbalanced, but it's very rare. I don't take anything like that. I just drink my smoothies and I eat my meat in the evening. Always organic, local, bison if I can, because bison is alkaline. But I'm so grateful for all the YouTubers out there that have shared their solutions to how you can clear this virus or stop suffering from it without taking antivirals from the pharmaceutical companies. And I have faith in myself that one day I'm going to meet someone and they're just going to think I'm just so freaking awesome and I'm badass. But until then, that's me. I love myself. I love myself through all of it. And I thank you guys. If you want to read my book, you can actually see the whole journey. I have it all laid out, and I have a bunch of recipes, and I have a bunch of, it's kind of like the detailed protocol. I've helped a few people as coaching clients who have contracted the virus and would like to heal it. You can always contact me. I'm willing to do consultations and, you know, all of that, coaching. Thank you for watching this really long video on my story, the tale behind damaged goods. Thank you for being present with me. And yeah, I'm wishing you guys the happy existence, and I love you so much. Blessings. It's been Observe, Breathe. Feel free to like and hit that notification bell and subscribe. Please and thank you. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you for existing.